Hello everybody! Today we're going to be taking a detailed look at Bachmann's HO scale Emily from the Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends universe. So just to begin with, Emily is hands down one of our favorite locomotives. She has a great looking color scheme, or livery as they say, and the matching coaches just complete the package. You can also check out our video on our G-scale Emily and coaches, also by Bachmann. Emily is a very unique-looking, emerald green tendered locomotive who lives in the Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends universe on the island of Sodor. She works on the Northwestern Railway and wears the number 12. In addition to that, she pulls two matching coaches, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Emily is definitely one of the good guys in the Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends universe. She has all the personality traits you would like to see in people you interact with every day. She's kind, caring, empathetic, and level-headed. She's also the voice of reason and stands up for others. She's also smart, capable, and can think quickly on her feet, or wheels as it were. She is also good at giving advice, a characteristic that led to becoming the railroad's safety engine. Oh, did I mention that on the TV shows, she also talks with a Scottish accent. Like all locomotives and rolling stock in the Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends universe, Emily is based on a real-life locomotive. She's based on the GNR, or Great Northern Railway, number 1 Class Stirling Single 422 steam locomotive. The Stirling Single was designed to pull express passenger coaches. The locomotives were built at the Doncaster Works from 1870 to 1895 with 53 units built. The Doncaster Works was known simply as the plant, and also built other notable locomotives such as the Flying Scotsman. The Stirling Single was also known as the 8-footer, and I'll bet you can guess why just by looking at Emily. The two drive wheels, one on each side, were 8 feet tall. Well, 8 feet 1 inch to be precise. The Stirling Singles were withdrawn from service between 1899 and 1916. As far as their disposition goes, only the number 1 has been preserved. All the rest were scrapped. Alright, let's take a detailed look at Bachmann's HO scale Emily. Alright, so we'll start with a side view of Emily here. And the most striking thing about her, I think, right off the bat, is that nice green paint job with the yellow accents. Kind of reminds me of the Green Bay Packers, but I think the color green might be a little bit off. And then it has this brown trim here on the outside of the running platform and also around the caboose. So yeah, so it's right off the bat, I think it's a great looking locomotive. The other striking feature about Emily is, again, that 8-foot drive wheel right there. That is, I've never seen that on any other locomotive model, and yeah, I think it's a pretty unique feature. So you can see here that the linkage, or the main rod here, is kind of tucked up here, but you can see that, and then you can see the other linkage down here. She's got some nice spoked green wheels. Right here, all of those wheels are spoked and the same color green as the main paint job. So yeah, very nice looking. Yeah, and you can see the smoke box up front here in black with the chimney, and then the boiler with the strapping across the boiler there, wrapped around the boiler, and then some piping work up here. Otherwise, there's no super great detail on the cab. There's no windows from the side or anything like that. There's some painted brass handholds there, presumably to climb into the cab. Got a little step up here, and then as we work back to the tender, you've got some suspension details here. This is a 6-wheel tender, and you've got your plastic, again, these little spoked inserts there. So, yeah, Emily's just a great looking locomotive. She's about 9 inches long, 9.5 inches long, I think, locomotive and tender together. And then if I didn't mention it, the white notation, she is a 422. So she's got 4 leading wheels, 2 drive wheels, and then 2 trailing wheels. And then back here on the tender, you'll see that there's what's supposed to be, I think, some kind of grate work here, or kind of grill work, I guess you would call it, railing work around the edge of the tender, but it's solid plastic. It's just painted to look like it's, like a kind of a grate or fencing, not fencing, but you know what I mean. So yeah, so it looks pretty good. The buffers have black buffer posts there, and then there are silver painted buffer pads on each end. So yeah, pretty nice looking here. Why don't we go ahead and give it a spin? All right, and here you're looking right behind the tender here. And again, it's a very square tender or rectangular here, except again for this kind of upper, kind of fencey or grate area here. We get a red buffer beam, and we've got a utility hook, and again, those buffer pads there. And then we've got the typical Bachmann hook and loop coupler back there. So other than that, I don't think there's too much to see back here from this angle, so we'll just go ahead and continue around. All right, so looking at this side of Emily, it's basically identical to the opposite side, so we won't spend too much time here. You might be able to see a couple of other features in profile, like you've got the whistle back here, you've got a steam dome of sorts there, and yeah, you can actually see how far out that running platform sticks out ahead of the smoke box in profile there, so that looks pretty good. But yeah, let's give it one more turn. Okay, in our front view here, obviously we have the nice face here of Emily, and we've mentioned this in all of the other HO and G scale Thomas the Tank Engine Friends Universe locomotives, that the eyes traverse back and forth as the locomotive moves along the track. But here's your front view here. You can see these little porthole windows back here, I think, on the cab. They're kind of outlined in brass, like a brass color. You can see this little brass cap on top of the chimney. And what else can we say here? You know what we did notice here is that the boiler, or the smoke box, kind of curves down into the piston area here. And it almost looks like a little hairstyle here. That may be obvious to people who watch the show all the time or whatever, but as I'm looking at this, I'm just kind of noticing that, and I think that's a pretty fun detail. Yeah, so there's a front view of Emily, and let's bring it around full circle. Okay, while we were spinning Emily around attached to the tender, just because the tender and the locomotive just look so great together, we didn't show the inside of Emily's cab or the front side of the tender here. So there's a view of that. There's no detail here. There's this little structure inside the cab here that kind of makes it look like the boiler is in the section of the boiler that's inside the cab. So it's not detailed in any way, shape, or form, but it does give a nice little effect of the boiler, the operation of the boiler, like inside the cab. And then on the tender here, again, no detail, but just to show you what's there. And then the coupling system here is just these kind of tongues with the holes in them, and then the little post on the tender will pop right into that hole there. And that's how on most of these, if not all these Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends Universe by Bachmann, that's how the tender's coupled to the locomotive. But otherwise, it's hook and loop. All right, let's take a look at the top and the bottom of both the tender and the locomotive. All right, looking at Emily from the top here, you can see here that that strapping that I mentioned from the side, wrapping over the boiler there, and then this kind of brass colored piping work going up either side of the boiler. And yeah, just kind of looking down, you can see how wide the smoke box is, and then you can kind of get a view down there into the front of the cab there. And you can also see here how far out that running platform stretches. Then it's got that bracing structure there, or support structure. And then you can see the buffer posts in profile. And then you notice it does have a hook and loop coupler up front, as well as on the back of the tender. So yeah, so there's a view from the top. Oh, and then you can see the wheel wells of those 8-footers. All right, let's take a look at the bottom. All right, looking at the bottom of Emily here, you can get a good shot at the wheels here. We said that this is a 4-2-2. So here's your 4 leading wheels there. And then you've got your big drive wheels there, and then your trailing wheels there. Otherwise, this is pretty typical of what you see with Bachmann. This is just the motor compartment here. You've got access screws. You get your Bachmann logoing there, and then some other kind of corporate trademark information, that type of thing. And then if you look up there, you might be able to see some screws way up in here, where I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but there's screws in there in case you need to separate the body from the chassis for whatever reason. Oh, and then you get a good look down at this linkage down here. And you'll see that linkage in action when we run it on the layout. All right, let's take a look at the tender. All right, looking at the tender from the top here, you can see we've got a nice fake coal load there. And it does have that kind of glistening effect there, like coal, I think, would give you, with the kind of the shiny side where it's all broken up and then the dull sides. So all that together, you got a little glistening fake coal load there. And then you've got your water port there. But yeah, not too much to see up there, not a whole lot of detail, but just to give you a look. All right, let's take a look at the bottom. All right, 6-wheel tender here. These are metal wheels. They sound nice on the track. And again, no real modeling detail down here as far as like realism of the, of the source material here, the subject matter. But there's a couple screw inlets there so you can remove the body from the chassis. And you've got your Bachmann logo there with again, the corporate information. And then this has a part number painted in white. That's pretty typical of most of the Bachmann stuff, especially the Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends stuff. But we don't see it on all of them. Like, I don't think I saw it on Emily's bottom or Emily's underside, but but you see it here, and that might be for both. I'm not 100% sure, but and then you've got your post here. This is the post that sticks into the little tab with the hole in it on the rear of the locomotive. But yeah, just to give you a look at the bottom. If we have these Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends Universe characters in multiple scales, we always think it's fun to kind of show them to you so you can see the difference, or the similarities, really. Obviously, the size is a difference, but Bachmann really does a good job at reproducing the details of these models in the various scales. So we don't have an N scale, Emily, because they don't make one. But if they made one, we'd probably have it. But you can see here, all of the details are pretty much accurate. There's nothing really missing from, say, the HO scale that's included on the large G scale. I think the only big difference that we see is on the grading or the kind of fence work that goes around the top of the tender. On the G scale, that's a real true kind of fencing or railing-y or whatever you want to call that, whereas on the HO scale, Emily, that's solid plastic that just kind of painted to look like it's fencing or that railing work there. So that's really the only difference. But otherwise, they are very, very similar in detail, despite the size difference. As far as Emily's coaches go in the literature, they arrived on the island of Sodor at the same time Emily arrived, but they weren't assigned to her until after she saved Thomas and Oliver from an intersection collision. The coaches were then assigned to her as an award of sorts for preventing the collision. Emily's coaches don't have personalities per se like you see with Annie and Clarabelle in the Troublesome Trucks. It's also difficult to determine the specific real-life basis for Emily's coaches. But their design is typical to 18th century wood-based clerestory coaches. Clerestory refers to that raised section of the roof. And they do share a lot of design traits you might see with the Stroudley coach. The coach's color scheme matches Emily's emerald green for the main color, and yellow and off-white for the trim and accents. Alright, let's take a detailed look at Emily's coaches. Alright, we'll start off with Emily's composite coach. And as you can see, there's quite a lot going on here detail-wise. None of the detail is functioning. Those doors don't open or anything like that, but they're stamped into the plastic. But they look good, just from a visual standpoint. So the most striking thing here, I think, is the emerald green paint job with the yellow pinstriping matches Emily's color scheme, or livery, as they say, and also the tender. So you can see on the doors there's some painted hardware there. That's a nice little detail. And you can see these recessed windows in the doors and in the body of the coach are a little bit recessed with some white trim painted in there. And those are clear plastic windows. in the coach there. And then kind of working down here, you can see the black plastic chassis, the metal wheels. The metal always sounds great on the track. And then you've got the little running boards down here, which is a nice detail. And then the brake and suspension detail underneath there too. It's not functional or anything like that. It's just, again, stamped into the plastic, but it's good visually. It's a good detail visually. But and then you've got the clerestory raised roof style roof there on top. So for ventilation and extra light is probably the reason for that. And then you've got this white trim up here too. Those might be vents in real life, or some kind of skylighty or some type of windowy type of thing. Yeah, it's a nice. The whole color scheme looks great together. The black, the yellow, the green, and the white all looks great. So yeah, let's give it a turn. If I didn't mention it, the coaches are about 5 inches in length. So here you are looking down the end of the coach here, and again you see that raised roof, that clerestory piece there, and then it's a semi kind of curved roof here, and then you've got this bracing, vertical bracing, and the black buffer beams there with the buffer pads. Everything's in black plastic at this end here, and then you've got your hook and loop coupler. All right, let's bring it around. All right, and on the opposite side here, this is basically identical to the opposite side. And yeah, so there's not a whole lot to say over here, but the details are pretty much the same. And yeah, just to give you a look at that. So let's give it another turn. And the end of the opposite end of the coach here is just identical to the opposite end. So there's not a whole lot to say here. So we'll just give you a look at that, and then we'll bring it around full circle. All right, so let's take a look at the top and the bottom. All right, looking at the top here, there's not a whole lot to see. It's just kind of smooth black plastic, kind of in a gloss paint, and I don't even know if you can really see the raised portion of that roof there, just looking straight down from the top. I mean, maybe you can see it from that angle, but yeah, just to give you a view to let you see what it looks like from the top. Let's take a look at the bottom. All right, as you can see here, it's the 6-wheel coach, and there's not a lot of modeling detail down here, but you can see the Bachmann logoing, the corporate information, and then the part number stamped into the bottom. There's a couple of access screws there in case you need to separate the body from the chassis. Yeah, there you go. Give you a quick look at the bottom of the coach. All right, so up next is Emily's brake coach. So this coach, we don't really have to go through this one in a lot of detail, because the only difference between this coach and the composite coach is that it has these opaque windows here. So you can see these 4 windows, they're painted solid white. That is really the only difference between these two coaches. So why don't we just, we don't need to look at the top and the bottom because I'm sure it's identical to the composite coach. So why don't we just give it a spin, just so you can see a little 360 here with the brake coach. And you can see on this side you have the 3 opaque windows on that end of the coach. So it's the same end, it's just the opposite side. Now these two sides aren't exactly identical on the brake coach here. On this side you have 4 opaque windows, and on the opposite side you have 3 opaque windows. So there is a slight difference between the two sides of this coach, but otherwise they're pretty identical. The two sides are pretty identical. All right, and similar to what we did with the locomotive and the tender, here is the composite coach in G scale in the background and the HO version in the foreground. And as we said with the locomotive, Bachmann does a good job at kind of reproducing the same quality of detail, really no matter what the scale. Obviously, when you get down to N scale, the quality of the details differs a little bit. But between HO and G scale, it's always pretty good. They're always pretty close to each other as far as the detail elements on it. So, yeah, kudos to Bachmann for doing a good job on these. And the same for the brake coach. We're showing the side with the 4 opaque windows, but just like on the HO model that we just reviewed, the G-scale one also has 3 opaque windows on the opposite side as opposed to the 4 on the side you're seeing here. But anyway, there's a view of the HO scale brake coach and the G-scale brake coach. All right, so there you have it. Bachmann's HO scale Emily from the Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends universe and her 2 coaches. Now, when we're going to take it out on the layout now, but when you see it on the layout, you're going to see it with 3 coaches. That's because we bought an extra composite coach for Emily, just because longer trains are more fun. So anyway, let's take it out on the layout and see how she does.